This week on the show, I'm joined by Grant Pillar. Grant is a financial planner and owner of Pillar Financial Group, where he offers financial planning services, insurance, and investment solutions to help his clients achieve their financial goals. Let's get into it. I'm Paul Blanco, and this is Small Steps, Big Wins. All right. Well, Grant, thank you for coming on Small Steps, Big Wins. And I know I've been watching you for a long time in our previous life at MetLife and now here at Mass. And it's been really fun to watch what you're building. And when I think of, taking small steps and continuing to get big wins and that persistency of doing it every single day, I'm so happy to have you on the show because you're living that every single day as an advisor. And I know that you're impacting so many lives. And, the conversations I've had with you have been very impactful. So thank you for coming on the show today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
And I know that you're off in Hawaii right now, and I appreciate you peeling away from that beautiful weather and the meetings you're attending to be on the show. So, when I think of all the listeners, I always like to talk about the journey, but it's really great to start with, how did you get in the industry and how did you get started? And, before we get to where you are today.
Yeah, no worries. I started, actually, believe it or not, I live in Minneapolis now, but I started in New York, not as an advisor, but in advertising. So completely different industry, but really, really good opportunity for me to learn about how individuals think, work, et cetera, how to try and make sales, more or less. And so for me, it was a great opportunity to learn how to hone in my skills and have to, pick myself up after the rejection, et cetera, right away. And then immediately after that, I moved to Minneapolis where we have the practice now. And it was very humble beginnings, very small steps at the beginning, no assistant, no staff, just kind of trying to make it as I could, and lots of time in the office. Now that's changed a little bit. So.
Yeah. And talk about when you think back to those days, the mental part compared to what it is today. Give me how you were feeling back then when you were doing that. I know I always tell people I quit 3 times my first year, but
100%
mental challenge.
I mean, that's the hardest part. You have to get over that. You can't call your mom. There's no communication with loved ones because they're going to say, no, it's too hard. You should just walk away. Yeah. When unfortunately we know what we have to do, which is pick the phone back up, get on the next call, et cetera. But yeah, it was tough. We always used the term back in the day. We were driving to office or driving to meetings, going across kitchen tables, et cetera. And there was this term called porched, where you'd schedule the meeting, you'd go out and you knew that they were home and they did not open the door. In fact, they'd shut off the light and you may have driven an hour to get there. And you just got to go back and make that next call, schedule the next appointment. Those were hard days for sure.
Yeah. And now when I fast forward to today, I mean, I think there's been, as an outsider looking in, and I'm just surmising. So, help me if I'm off base here, but, what you opened up with, no assistant, no team. And, I think you bought into teaming pretty early on in your career. And why don't you talk about, where the team is today and what it looks like?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm super fortunate. There was a lot of really, really good folks who spent time talking to me about how to continue to grow my practice every single year. In fact, just as recent as when you and I were talking in Munich, it's challenging and accepting the challenge and thinking, okay, I need to break down what I'm doing and how can I change to get better. And so we just kind of take that same mindset over and over again. So 1 part-time assistant to now we've got 20 full-time employees. We've got 3 offices around the country. And I'm very fortunate to get to spend time doing lots of things like this. And still seeing clients on a regular basis. But the day-to-day, the transactions, when I get a yes from a client, there's not really much that I do after that, which I'm very fortunate to say it's because of the great team that we've been able to build, which has certainly had its growing pains, no doubt. I mean, there have been many moments where we're not sure what direction to go. And we've been very fortunate to seek out advice from other advisors. In fact, some of those advisors are within the Barnum system and have been incredibly helpful in terms of, hey, here's how we do it. Doesn't mean we adopt that. But man, I have gotten a long way copying ideas with permission, of course. But man, it's very helpful.
Well, it's interesting you say that too. And I know that, and I appreciate you saying that. But they feel that same way about you. But I think what's really cool is the best you're still in a study group and working with other advisors. It's not just, some of it's just casual conversations, but you've put in the time to learn from others and, tell me, and I know you very well, that you bring your game when you go to those things to share and you give as much as you get. So tell me what that means to you, because I've been doing, this is probably my 70th show, and we haven't really talked about that very much. Why don't you give me a little bit about how your study group works and what's that's meant to you?
Well, I think it was more of there was some really patient advisors that like, sure, we're all going to get together on the East Coast, and sure, we'll let this guy from Minnesota fly in from time to time. And then it slowly became much more of a great sharing of ideas. And really, we don't want to make mistakes, but when we do, we all learn from them. We call it tuition, right? So if I make a mistake, I want them to know about it so they don't make the same mistake. And I know they feel the same way. And sure, it's easy to say today, I'm not making any mistakes, but that's just not the truth. The reality is we all make mistakes all the time. It's easier to cover up mine because I've got all the staff that take care of me. They make, things right when I screw up or do something, maybe not the best. And it's because of the conversations that we've had in the study groups. Now we meet every 6 to 8 weeks or so. Used to be in person more often. Now it's on Zoom. But I look forward to those discussions because we're all looking at the same world. It's just with different lenses, right? And so the opportunity we have is that, hey, I tried this, fantastic. I'm going to try that. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to, give you some kind of feedback on, yep, that worked or it didn't work, or I did that 3 years ago. More importantly, though, it's accountability. I'm very fortunate to be close with a couple of guys from SKG, and I'm very fortunate to have lots of different exchanges with them on a daily basis above and beyond what we do just in our study groups. And it's that keeps me driving further because growth is our goal all the time. And so it's really great to have perspective and also kind of benchmark against them. So that's been what's been a huge driver for me. And also just the great realization that we're all business owners and we really don't have a lot of people to talk to about our business. And so somebody that gets what you're going through is very helpful.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's interesting. It's an interesting industry. I've been in an industry study group for probably 25 years. I remember someone saying to me when I first got in the group is people from separate companies wouldn't come together if it was like the car industry and share trade secrets, right? But the financial service industry, at least in what I've seen so far, those industries that shares really well. And you're right, not a lot of people understand. And I think what's really different, and maybe you can help me clarify this, but of course you're in financial services, you use the word entrepreneur, but I think you're very similar to now a mid-sized firm where you're building distribution. Yeah, it's very different than when you were back getting porched. Do you feel like 100%. You're building more of this business model than a financial planning practice now?
Yeah, I think you're spot on in that the conversations we have in the study group and then also just with individuals that I respect, yourself included, it's really, we're talking more about very, very different topics. It's not the day-to-day of, okay, I'm going to do this with the client, I'm going to do that with the client. We've already kind of built that out. Certainly, there are always opportunities to improve that process, but it is absolutely more about how many more people can we help? Where else can we be looking? What are other opportunities outside of just sitting down with, this individual across the table that I'm missing and challenging myself to say, okay, if that's truly what I'm going to do, okay, here we are in 2025. What am I going to try to achieve and who's going to hold me accountable? And that's where it's been really nice to lean on the study group to say, this is what I want to do. And quite honestly, it puts me in that position where I have to be humbled a little bit if I don't hit my goals. I don't want to be in that spot, but my wife's not going to hold me accountable. Nothing against her. It's just not her. That's not the kind of relationship we have, nor do I want it to be that way. This is primarily the professional world. And these are the guys that I talk to about it.
Yeah, that's great. Now, can we unbundle just from a high level when you say 20 staff, is it a broke down between staff that is truly, helping run the day-to-day plus advisors? So what is the breakdown of that right now?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So we have we split business with a handful of different advisors. I've been very fortunate over the course of the last probably 15 years or so to be able to acquire multiple practices. Sometimes we acquire a practice and that advisor stays with us. Sometimes we acquire a practice and that advisor retires. And as we go through that transition, there are periods of time where we may have advisors that are working with us, but ultimately on their way towards retirement. And then we have what are called service advisors or staff advisors. We're very fortunate to have a lot of clients that we do communicate with on a regular basis. And so we have service advisors that reach out to them on a regular basis, get updates on what's going on in their life, update their financial plan, et cetera. That is a big part of it. So when you think about the 20 people, 5 of which are going to be client-facing people, myself included. And then the rest are going to be focused on different avenues of the business that we have, whether that be operations, whether that be applications, whether that be servicing, whether that be communication with existing clients or other advisors that we partner with from an investment standpoint. Those are different things that they all focus on. But the day-to-day bread and butter of those 5 advisors, the intent is that someone is scheduling to make sure that they are sitting in front of clients every hour of the day. That is the intent. Now, we like to break it down to even more than that, say 15 to 30-minute time increments. But our job is to sit down with clients, and that is what we show up to do every single day. If we do our job, they're going to deliver on their end, which is when the client says yes, everything happens. When there's a service issue that comes up, someone takes care of it. That's what makes us great. It's not me as the advisor. I'm just so incredibly smart. That's not the case. It's that we've got great people around us. So outside of ops, it's trading, it's investment research, it's paraplanning. Those are the other roles that kind of fill out the bench, if you will. But essentially, my job is to sit in front of the client, take notes, and get the yes. That's it.
Got it. Now, when you talk about your service advisor role, did you start with just one where you just took your book and you said, I have 1,000 clients now and I have to carve off a certain amount? And, what was that process like for you?
It's a really tough process because number one, a lot of the folks that I'm talking about potentially carving away are the ones that got me to where I was. Yeah. And that's a really hard conversation, but it's a meaningful conversation because you care about that client enough that you want to make sure they're taken care of. And so you need to commit someone else to them because there's just no way it's sustainable for you to see that many appointments and be a good advisor. Sure, you could see that many people, but the reality is you are not doing the job that you did that they hired you for. And so you've got to extend your overall support. So if you make that commitment to see that client, to have those conversations, you have to have some type of process in place to take care of that client because you ultimately, if you're growing, if you're in a growth mindset, are not going to be there with that client forever. And you've got to have the right people that are the right type of mentality. And that's for you to decide, whatever kind of practice you run, that they agree and are following through on that. So that's what the service advisors do for us. We have thousands of households that need to be serviced. And there's just no way that any given day I have that many hours and can be that effective. And so we have to have them make that commitment to those clients. And so we started with one. We've continued to grow it. It's been a very, very beneficial thing for us. The service advisors that we have are CFPs, certified financial planners, and all of them are always constantly challenged with getting more designations. We don't stop there, but the expectation is that we're bringing additional perspectives in, which is a good thing for the client overall.
Yeah, I love it. And I think that as I watch advisors and I talk to them and coaching them, a lot of them go through this process where they're looking to give up Paul Blanco and they say, well, but Paul needs only this and I can do that. And did you find yourself going through that in the beginning? I mean, there's 15 minutes.
Yes. I could easily do it faster. And this is where I coach my staff all the time. I don't care if you can do it faster. You don't have enough time and you should be focusing on other things. And so we're all about capacity and freeing up time. And so if truly you could do other things, you would be helping the organization better in those focuses or those, commitments as opposed to doing what you're doing now. And that sometimes is really hard for them to understand, but it's a giving up and that's tough.
Yeah. And last question on the service advisor for me. And were they people that were in the industry that were talented, but maybe not hunters and looking for a different role, and you were able to find them and obviously let them understand the vision and they fit into that and it's a base and bonus type of role?
Yeah, so you hit it on the head. The industry itself, financial services, is a really, really hard industry. I think we all know that, listening to this podcast, et cetera. The reality is there are lots of really smart, talented individuals that just don't make it. And it's no fault of their own. They're trying, but they might be in a bad system. There are lots of organizations out there, let's say like wirehouses, that just focus on different things. It's not true financial planning. It's a very different structure. And so we've been fortunate to see and find individuals in those places that are really great people that deserve, I don't want to say a second chance. I don't think that that's fair. They would be fine, but they're not fulfilling their potential. And when they join us, they start to fulfill that potential, and it's great for the client and it's great for them. And so, yes, from a compensation standpoint, absolutely. That's been a huge help for those advisors, making that transition, but it doesn't come without expectations. I mean, there are lots of expectations that we put on them and remind them of on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, because if not for holding people accountable and measuring the goals, we wouldn't hit nearly the goals that we set.
Oh yeah, I think that's amazing. And obviously trains run on tracks, and it sounds like you got lots of tracks that they're going on, and you're running a huge business now. And if you didn't have systems and processes like that, it would go off the rails.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the nice part is individuals like yourself or other individuals we read about, hear about, speak about, podcasts, et cetera, are always giving different perspectives. So it's like, hey, I think I have a pretty good idea, but what could I tweak this year? What could I really focus on improving this year? Not I need to change everything, but it's like, what are the one or two things that we can do to just be a little bit more efficient?
Yeah, I love it. And, you brought up a piece earlier where you said, when you started to talk about other advisors that you're sharing revenue with, that are part of acquisitions. And I know that, usually when you see exponential growth like you've had and you continue to have, there's always if you dig in a little deeper, you learn that there's something that's changed in their career. I think that I don't know if it was intentional. I'd love to hear that, or fall into it. And then you said, oh man, I'm good at this and I could do this. And so walk us through, because you've done multiple of these and it sounds like it's part of your own strategy for you and your team.
Yes. And I'm sure there's a guy in your office who will mention something about there being like a manual. Tell him I'm not going to share it with him ever. So yeah, he knows who he is. Anyway, the gist of it is I got to the point where I'm sitting down with clients and it's great. We're really having great conversation. We're closing more cases. We're setting a lot of appointments and meeting and actually closing, which is great. And to get to the point where he said, well, what if I did the same thing, but the close that I got was not for one client, but for 100 clients or for 200 clients? And so that's where I started to think, okay, well, there are opportunities out there where there are advisors that maybe are at the later stage of their career, maybe are in a position where they can't deliver on the service, or maybe are in a position, for lack of any other control, maybe their health or the compliance world is too difficult for them to continue to be in the role that they are or deliver the service that we would expect or a client would need. And so we started to basically put lines in the water. And I say that knowing full well that there is not a store, there is not a way that you can just go over and say, hey, I'm interested in this practice and I want to buy it. That does not happen just like going to the casino and winning on the first run. If you do have that happen, best of luck to you. But in general, it is a lot of hard work, just like we're used to. And it's not something you can dedicate all of your time to. But when you dedicate a percentage of your time in a given year to it, you're calling, you're getting hung up on, you're getting told that, I've got a plan. I don't want to follow up with you, just like every single client, but even worse because it's a financial advisor that you're trying to win over. But ultimately, they come around because they know they need a plan and they may respect you. They may have a good perspective. But we've had plenty that it didn't work out and it just wasn't a good fit, or they said no. And so you're kind of sad and it doesn't work out. But the reality is it is a great opportunity for additional business development when approached correctly. And so that approach has to do with how much time you have in a given year or a given day. You've got to be reaching out. You've got to identify those opportunities, and then you've got to follow through. Some of these we chased for years before they said yes. And I'm okay with that because I'm not elephant hunting every day. It's just, on every Tuesday or whatever the case may be. Yeah.
So what you just said, is it a process that your team consistently you are consistently hunting for these even
Always.
so it's something that just like you get up in prospect, you're getting up and prospecting for, acquisitions. And how long do you talk to?
Yeah. No, that's how I really just me. I don't try and involve the team because we deal with human beings. And so they always get challenging, right? You think something's going to happen and then they don't. And so I try not to get, the staff excited or disappointed. I kind of handle those emotional components, but we probably started 11 or 12 years ago focusing on it. And the first 2 times we got all the way up to the altar. I was ready to say I do, and they both didn't show up on the wedding day. So it was very, very disappointing. But what I learned from that was here are all the things that I need to do. Like staff needs to be prepared to take on a couple hundred new clients. How are we going to transition these accounts? Do we have fact finders? What is the role of that new advisor? How am I going to pay for this? What are the tax implications of this additional income? All of those different things are critical and helpful in the process. So thankfully, those 2 no's didn't happen. And then the third did, and it was much bigger than the first 2. And so because of those 2 no's, I was much more prepared. Now, I'll never say I was fully ready, and no one ever is because you can't be. But it's a big investment. So I have advisors ask me all the time, like, oh, I have a part-time staff. I'll just bring on 100 new clients. We should be fine. Not a chance. Because you're putting up all the money in hopes that these clients stick with you. There's no guarantee. I mean, they could just leave. And so whatever you invested could be gone. It's just one of those things that you've got to be tracking towards and just be prepared for something to go wrong. And if you're really stretched thin, it's not going to be great because it could be incredibly expensive on both ends. And that's not what you want to go through.
And I love what you said, though, that you learn very quickly how prepared or unprepared you are.
Yeah.
And you can't think about it, for all the listeners here, not only are you going out of your comfort zone, you're learning and if you really self-reflect like you did, you made sure you were real with yourself and you said, all right, if I really want this model, I got to be totally prepared, even knowing I don't know everything.
Yeah.
But at least I can get the deal done and then figure out some of the things as you go. So since that time, let's just assume 10 years ago, how many practices have you acquired since then?
As of today, 13. We'll try and do 3 more this year.
Wow, congratulations. That's amazing. And they in all different sizes and
all different shapes and sizes, experiences, etc. I've been very fortunate to see lots of other advisors, how they work outside of my study group, how well they know or don't know their clients. And candidly, every single practice we've acquired, we've gotten better because we've learned 1 or 2 things from each of those advisors that we didn't think about. We didn't really put in our plan. And it was tremendously helpful for us. So it's honed in our skills or expanded our perspective, and both of which have been very, very beneficial.
Amazing. And I'm assuming, and I shouldn't, but I'm assuming many of them weren't in your exact market. Am I correct?
No. Yeah. It's unfortunately or fortunately, I know everybody wants to live in Minnesota, including a couple of guys on your team. They'd be very happy here, but that's not the case. And so we do have a very, very nice airport, and we do send our advisors to lots of different places on a regular basis because that's where the clients are, and that works for us.
And so that's why, hence, when you said you have 3 locations early on in the process, is due to where some of these books are.
You got it. Yeah. We believe very strongly to at least have a presence there. We think that helps with retention, which is a critical component whenever you're talking about acquiring a practice. Because again, you're not coming in saying, hey, guess what? That advisor you worked with for 25 years, he did everything wrong. That's not going to go well with the client. So you have to take time and work in your process and structure over a period of time, which could take years, months. It just depends. And so if you're thinking I'll get a quick revenue hit from it, not necessarily the case.
And I think many advisors are, scared when they hear some of the multiples or when they try to say, how do I make my money back within 1 year? And they're not understanding that the process. And you said a big word before, planning. Many advisors are not planning. And as you dig deeper on some of these clients, there's probably more opportunities than many advisors realize that are out there in the making.
I think, Paul, that there are lots of really, really great advisors within our system that their day-to-day actions or interactions with clients is tremendously better than what most of these advisors are doing right now. And so it's not that you have to all of a sudden do 10 times better. It's just do your thing, but understand that it may be a hybrid for a little while because you're transitioning a client, and anybody, the way that we all handle change is not perfect. And so you need to be accepting of that and recognize that it may take a little bit longer than you want. And so that patience or grace is very, very critical in terms of being successful.
Yeah, but having scale behind you is even as is important.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have that, that's the challenge, and it's where I worry about most advisors that try and pursue practice acquisitions. If your staff is already stressed, you don't want to have staff turnover on top of taking on new clients. That's just a recipe for disaster for your existing practice and the new practice that you just acquired.
Big time. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
When I talk about this pretty much every show, but we saw a major paradigm shift when COVID hit in 2020. A lot of bad happened, but there was a lot of good. Like today, you and I speaking, from Connecticut to Hawaii. I get the sites, and many of these clients are probably pre or retirees that were used to maybe going to see someone at the local office. When you're looking today from 2020 to now, the last 4 years, almost 5, has that changed the dynamics of the process that you've used, even with your existing book? Are you using Zoom more frequently today and getting more effective with your time?
As long as we're effective in the amount of information that we provide the client, 100%. Many clients now are opting for Zoom. Many clients now are opting for phone calls, which is completely fine with us. We want to be flexible and meet them where they are. Some still do like to meet face-to-face, which is fine. We haven't put that in place, but I do lean back on my study group. There were things that we were talking about in our study group pre-COVID that we had already implemented. So it was a very easy transition for us. And that's been something that we've been able to adapt. So Zoom is one of those things. Calendly is one of those things where we're able to meet clients where they are. And sometimes it's at the apprehension of the advisor. We all think, our clients wouldn't like that. And sure enough, the reality is, no, that's not the case. They do like it. Yeah,
they do. And I remember having many conversations saying, hey, you're not going to be traveling that much. Like, I'm going to see everybody. I'm saying, yeah. And now they're like, you were right, man. Like, my clients love it. And it's just become a new way of doing business. And I do think that, and I'm sure you're ahead of the curve on this, but I asked this question on a couple of shows a few weeks ago. I'm calling it Zoom face-to-face. But you have to get effective at doing what you were doing at the kitchen table or in your office on Zoom. That's from illustrating to drawing. And I'm curious, you're probably doing a ton of that right now.
Yeah, no, we do. In fact, in 2020, when COVID happened, we got the most amount of referrals because we were calling clients left and right. We were having Zooms with them and we were checking in, and they loved the touch. They love to at least be talking to someone. It's not that we had good news to share. The market was terrible for a good period of time, but we were there. We were having the conversations with them, which was important. And so that, I think, helped out tremendously. But how effective we can be on Zoom and how receptive clients are to that, you're absolutely right. It allows us to be more efficient with our time and actually be better for the client, because we can hop on a quick Zoom and just talk through numbers very easily versus, I got to drive out and see you. Oh, you didn't show up on time. Oh, my entire day's blown up. So
they got to greet you, walk you in, walk you out, and all that good stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I love it. I think it's amazing. And I think for us attracting a different generation into our industry, it's a game changer for them too, because they're used to doing business this way.
And talent too. From a staffing standpoint, that's been a blessing. Yeah.
So you have staff in multiple parts of the country.
We do. Yeah. And that's, or they need to work from home because the kid's sick or whatever the case is. They don't miss a beat, which is hugely valuable for us. Like that's very, very necessary.
It's interesting. I remember yesterday we had a little snowfall here, not very little, like maybe an inch, but in the old days I was panicked like everyone. Yeah. And now it's like, it doesn't even matter if it snows anymore, especially from where you are, you get a lot.
Yeah. We get a little bit of it, a little bit.
Yeah. A lot more. I've been there. So, this has been amazing, Grant. Listen, I guess my next one, my last real big question for you is what's next? Is a lot of the same, or, what are you working on for 25 and on? Like, where are you going?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, it's very much appreciate having the opportunity to talk to you. It's something that we talk about on a regular basis because at one point in time, I'd written down goals, and you think, oh man, I'll never get there. That's crazy. Okay, I'll put it down on a piece of paper, but sure, we'll see. And then you check back a year or two later, and it's like, oh my gosh, like it happened. And so for us, it's setting some really big goals for growth. And I'm very fortunate to have a great leadership team that's very focused on that. And so it's just a matter of tracking and executing. And our hope is that we can continue that growth trajectory. So we live in Minnesota. Hockey stick growth is what I like to say. So if you think of a hockey stick, it just shapes straight up. We want to continue on that path, and we're committed to making the investments necessary. Sometimes that's in form of practice or investments in the practice. But that's what we're committed to right now. And then other than that, I can't imagine anything other than that. I mean, it's just what we focus on day to day.
Yeah. Well, when you have a leader that has a growth mindset and is willing to put themselves out there with a vision and talk about where you're going and not be afraid to say that and then execute on a day-to-day basis. And, just for everyone out there, he might have a different role here, Grant, but he's a workhorse, and that comes with that. So it's amazing. Last one, I said it was the last one, but I want to get a little personal. I know you train a lot. I know you spend time with your kids. So tell me are you an early guy? Do you get up early and crank it, or do you sleep into like 8:30,
No, I'm a mess if I'm not hitting my routine. So my routine is, a little after 4. I apologize. I've got 4 kiddos, and one of them wakes up pretty early. So I'll hit the gym, come home. He's usually up. And then we're constantly, I'm very fortunate that 4 of my employees meet me at the gym at that time frame. It's pretty remarkable. But we try and get a lot done immediately before the world wakes up market-wise. So we can be ahead of the day as opposed to behind. And then it's just routine. If I don't have my full day blocked with appointments, I get anxious. I start picking up the phone. Very rarely does that happen where I'm not full in terms of appointments. But if I get a reschedule, I'm got to get on it. It's been ingrained. I can't not do it. So, yeah.
So 4 a.m. you go, and then you just have a routine. I love that. Laid out the stuff, I'm sure, and getting cranking, right?
I mean, that's the case. So the kids all have sports. So I get home a little earlier than some guys I know. But the reality is we've got that commitment to lots of different activities, both personal and professional. And so that's been a blessing for us, my wife and I, that we can have that flexibility with this job, but then also trust that our team is moving in the right direction while we're out.
Well, Grant, super proud of you, man. Congratulations on where you are. And like I said earlier, small steps, big wins. And I think that, as you were talking, you did the blocking and tackling that you're supposed to, and you put yourself in a position to go a little different route, and you've built something really special. So I can't wait to have you back in a few years. And I know you'll be well past that hockey stick and abs on you. So thank you for being on Small Steps, Big Wins. I appreciate it, man.
Hey, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And say hi to all the boys at SKG for me. I appreciate them.
I will. And everyone, please share Apple, Spotify, and get it out there to everyone. I appreciate it. And Grant, thanks again. Enjoy the rest of the trip, man. Thank you for listening to Small Steps, Big Wins. Please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
All opinions expressed by the program participants are solely their current opinions and do not reflect the opinions their respective parent companies or affiliates or the companies with which the program participants are affiliated. Investments or strategies mentioned in this program may not be suitable for you, and you should make your own independent decision regarding them. This material does not take into account your particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs, and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for you. You should strongly consider seeking advice from your own investment advisor. Securities and investment advisory services offered through qualified registered representatives of MML Investor Services, LLC. Member SIPC, 6 Corporate Drive, Shelton, Connecticut, 06484, telephone number 203-513-6000.